So there are moments in life when something strange appears inside us that we cannot explain. You might see a friend achieve something, maybe some kind of relationship, maybe some kind of job, maybe some kind of recognition that you never really cared about before, but you start to feel some kind of strange pull towards it. For example, a song that you usually ignored, you start to like it when many people start to listen to it. A restaurant became desirable when you see a long line outside it. A person became more attractive when you realized that other people also wanted them to. So these moments, they seem normal, they seem trivial, but they leave behind a question that most of us do not examine. Why did that desire arise in me? What exactly is it that made me want this? Where exactly did it come from? And most of the time, we explain this by assuming that the desire arose spontaneously from within, that the desire is something deeply personal. We believe that our preferences emerge from within us, that they arise naturally from our personality, our tastes, our individuality. We say things like, I just like it, or it's simply my preference. In modern culture, we constantly encourage to think of ourselves as autonomous individuals whose desires originate internally. The idea of authenticity is built upon this assumption that somewhere inside us exists a genuine self whose wishes and longings belong uniquely to us. If we look more closely at our own experiences, things begin to feel less certain. And many of our desires seem strangely dependent on the presence of others. They intensify when others share them, and they weaken when others abandon them. And sometimes they only appear when somebody else has expressed them. Think about how often our sense of value is shaped by what others value. A film becomes meaningful because people praise it. A career becomes respectable because society admires it. Something about another person's desire seems to give objects a new kind of gravity, as if their attention quietly pulls our attention towards the same thing. And without realizing it, we start to move in the same direction that others are moving in. A troubling possibility starts to emerge that our own desires may not be ours. Maybe many of the things we believed we desired freely were never really ours to begin with. This idea lies at the center of René Girard. He called it mimetic desire. Girard proposed that human desire is rarely spontaneous. We learn what we want by observing what others want. Our desires are often reflection of other people's desires, quietly mirrored inside us. At first, this idea starts to seem very simple, but if you start to look at this idea and try to find the same pattern in relationships, in literature, in career, in every small choice, our perspective on things starts to change. What we thought were personal desires start to look like echoes of somebody else's desires. And if we move further into this direction, we will realize that the people who inspire us to desire are almost always the people we start to resent. To understand why this happens, we have to understand the structure of desire itself. If Girard is right, desire does not usually begin where we think it does. It does not start between a subject and an object. It starts between two people. Before we ever come to want something, there is often a moment of quiet suggestion. Someone else enjoys it, someone else values it, someone else reaches for it. And in witnessing that gesture, something subtle happens inside us. The object starts to grow with a different kind of significance. It acquires a different kind of meaning that we did not ever see in it. A remarkably simple illustration appears in 2 by Satyajit. It has no dialogues, but in its own silent interaction, it reveals to us this birth of desire between two people. At the beginning of the film, we see a wealthy boy alone in his room. The room is filled with toys, elaborate mechanical toys, expensive gadgets, miniature instruments, things designed to entertain and not stimulate curiosity. And yet, the boy does not seem particularly captivated by them. He moves from one toy to another almost absent-mindedly, activating them briefly and then abandoning them just as quickly. There is a restlessness in the way he plays. None of his toys seem capable of holding his attention for very long. They exist around him like objects of convenience, rather than objects of genuine fascination. This is an important detail because it shows us something about desire before it is awakened. The toys are his, the toys are already there. So possession of the object does not produce engagement. Ownership does not automatically generate desire. From outside the house, a sound appears. It's faint at first, but distinct enough to draw the boy's attention. He looks towards the window, curious. Outside stands another child, a poor boy playing a simple instrument. Unlike the wealthy boy's mechanical toys, the object is crude, it's handmade, it's almost primitive. Yet the poor boy is completely absorbed in it. There is no boredom in his play, there is no restlessness. His engagement with the instrument is immediate and sincere. Something about this scene changes the atmosphere inside the room. The wealthy boy begins to look at his own toys, but now he looks at them differently. The same object that previously held little interest suddenly becomes tools through which he can respond. One of the instrument is picked up, another toy is activated. The room that once felt dull and unengaging now becomes a stage for interaction. What changed was not the toys themselves. What changed was the presence of other person's desire. This moment demonstrates Girard's insight very clearly. It shows that desire is not born just because the presence of the object. It is born because somebody else has revealed its value to it. The poor boy did not intend to influence the rich boy. He was simply playing. He revealed that something could be desired. And in that moment, the rich boy's indifference begins to transform into engagement. If the genesis of desire lies in the influence of another person, then to understand how desire works, we need to understand its structure. René Girard proposed that desire always follows a particular structure. A structure so common that once we see it, we begin to recognize it everywhere. According to Girard, desire is not a simple relationship between a person and an object. It's not a simple wish like I want this or I want that. In desiring, the person is not simply desiring the object. He is also desiring the being of the other person who has demonstrated its value to us. The person does not simply want the possession of the object, but he also wants the satisfaction, the autonomy, the enjoyment that the other person who already has the object enjoys. So desire here forms a triangle between an object, the subject, and the mediator. The subject is the person who desires, the object is the thing that appears desirable, and the mediator is the person who demonstrates the desirability of the object. The mediator is crucial because they act as a model. By observing their desire, the subject learns what to value. In other words, the mediator silently teaches the subject what is worth wanting. What appears to us as a direct attraction towards an object is often something far more indirect. The object becomes meaningful because someone else has already directed our attention towards it. This triangular structure can be seen clearly into by Satyajit. At the beginning of the interaction between the two boys, the structure seems something like this. The wealthy boy becomes the subject, the toys become the object, and the poor boy becomes the mediator. It is the poor boy's engagement with his simple instrument that suddenly awakens the rich boy's engagement with his own toys. The toys themselves were already present in his room, but their meaning was dormant. Only after another child demonstrated genuine enjoyment does the rich boy begin to participate in the same activity. Girard also noticed that all mediators do not function the same way. A mediator that inspires us from a great distance that they can never really become a rival, that is called external mediation. In these cases, the mediator is admired but never directly competed with. A person might imitate the lifestyle of a celebrity, the ideals of a fictional hero, or the success of a historical figure. The mediator exists in a different sphere of possibility, far enough away that admiration can remain relatively peaceful. But sometimes the mediator exists much closer to us, close enough to become our rival, close enough to desire the same objects we desire. When this happens, the dynamic changes dramatically. Girard calls this internal mediation. In internal mediation, the mediator becomes both a model and an obstacle. The person who originally inspired the desire now stands in the way of fulfilling it. The object can only belong to one of them. What began as imitation slowly transforms into competition. And this is precisely the direction in which the interaction between the two boys moves. As the boys respond to each other through their toys, the triangular structure tightens. The poor boy is no longer simply demonstrating enjoyment. He becomes a presence the rich boy must answer. Each sound, each gesture becomes part of a silent exchange. The mediator moves from being merely an example to becoming something closer to a rival. Because when the mediator becomes the rival, the emotions around desire start to darken. Admiration and imitation slowly give way to comparison, tension, and hostility. The person who once inspired our desire now appears to stand between us and what we want. What begins as imitation transforms into rivalry, and this rivalry gives way to resentment. As we saw in external mediation, a model already exists, but it is at a distance. We admire them, we imitate them, but they are never really a threat in this real world because the mediator is significantly far away. The relationship remains stable because there is no possibility of conflict. When the mediator enters our world, they become someone who can possess what we desire, who can take away what we want, or who threaten what we already have. The mediator now holds a very deeply ambiguous position because they are the ones who inspired us. They are the ones who showed what to desire and how to desire it. And at the same time, they stand as an obstacle to that desire. This contradiction gives birth to what philosophers like Max Scheler called ressentiment. Ressentiment is not simply envy or jealousy or hatred, it is a much more corrosive condition. It is when admirability cannot be openly confessed and it transforms into hostility. It arises when we fail to possess the object of desire and we cannot admit it. The subject cannot admit that the mediator was the one who inspired the desire in them. In this revised narrative, the mediator is no longer the one who inspires. He's more like an intruder. Neither of them explicitly declare rivalry, yet the structure of their interaction reveals this insight that the mediator has turned into a rival. Now something different happens. When the rivalry intensifies, the object starts to disappear. It starts to lose its place. It is not about possessing the object anymore, as you will see in the clip. The real focus becomes the rival himself. Each participant begins to measure themselves against the other. Every action becomes a response, every move a challenge. The object which once seemed so valuable now functions mainly as a symbol within the struggle. Girard believed that this is the natural endpoint of mimetic escalation. When two individuals mirror each other's desire closely enough, rivalry intensifies until one of them must establish dominance over the other. The conflict seeks resolution not by sharing the object, but by eliminating the rival's claim to it. Into this moment arrives when the rich boy finally deploys the ultimate advantage available to him, the destructive power of the mechanical toy. With a single gesture, he destroys the poor boy's instrument. The rival's object is eliminated. The exchange of responses is abruptly silenced. In one sense, the rich boy has achieved exactly what mimetic rivalry pushes towards. The mediator, the rival who provoked and sustained the conflict, has been neutralized. The immediate obstacle has been removed. But what remains in the aftermath is something unexpectedly hollow. The victor does not produce the type of satisfaction that one might expect. The room is still full of toys. They still function the same. This is the irony of the whole interaction. The rival who appears to be the obstacle from preventing the fulfillment of desire was the rival who produced his desire at the first place. The victory reveals that the struggle was never really about the object at all. It was about the other person. The rich boy never really wanted to interact with the objects of the poor boy, but he wanted the being of the poor boy. He wanted the same type of tranquility. He wanted the same type of autonomy. He wanted the same type of enjoyment. So how often do we pursue things that were not really important to us, but because they were revealed important to us, they were revealed as desirable to us? How often do admiration and resentment quietly intertwine in a relationship with rivals, colleagues, and competitors? This rivalry reveals to us that the person or the people we struggle against may have silently inspired the desire in us from the very beginning. And sometimes when the rival finally disappears, we are left confronting an uncomfortable realization. The thing we fought for was never entirely ours to begin with. When you begin to look at desire this way, it shifts your perspective on life, especially on your own longings, on your own wishes. None of these moments feel dramatic while they're happening. They seem very ordinary, but together they show us that our desires do not exist in isolation. They emerge within a web of relationships and influences. And this doesn't mean that our desires are false or they are fabricated. It just means that our desires do not exist in a very solitary manner. We learn to desire partly by watching others. We learn to desire partly by being influenced by others around us. We start to value what others around us value. This does not show any kind of flaw in human nature, but it shows a different kind of understanding, a different kind of awareness of our own nature. Because once we recognize how easily desire is mirrored, we gain a possibility, however small, a possibility of choosing which type of desires will shape our lives.